Hi, everyone. Welcome to My Weight Live. Tonight, we're talking about CBT as a tool for reaching a healthier weight with medical expert Dr. Sandy Van. It's going to be a great show, but before we get started, tell me where you're watching from and how you're doing tonight. I'm happy you're here with us. Dr. Van, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Ansley.
So let's start at a high level. What is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT?
CBT is one of the most common forms of psychotherapy. It's based on the premise that your thoughts influence your behaviors and your emotions. And one of the core tenets of CBT is to change the way you think, also known as cognitive restructuring. And the reason for that is that the idea is that if you change the way you think, you can change your behavior and the subsequent emotions. It was originally developed to manage a diverse range of mental health conditions, notably depression, anxiety, or eating disorders. But not everyone who benefits from CBT has a mental health condition. It can be really effective to help anyone with stress management, or there's been a lot of data to support its use in the area of weight management.
So we'll talk about the specific process of how to do CBT and how someone might get started using it. But first, let's talk about why it's something worth exploring for reaching a healthier weight. How can it help people who are trying to do that?
Study after study indicates that while many succeed in losing weight, losing some weight with a diet, that the long-term results are overwhelmingly poor. Most people living with obesity know what to do. They understand nutrition. They understand every diet under the sun, but knowing how is the missing link. So how do you stick to a diet in the face of stress? How do you stick to a diet in the face of celebrating or feeling lonely? That's where CBT comes into play.
Oh, wow. All right. I'm really excited to dive into all of that with you. But first, let's do our trivia question. If you answer our question tonight, folks, you will get some delicious ideas for healthy meals you can make from items you probably have in your pantry right now. Super handy these days. And all you have to do is answer the trivia question, which is true or false, yoga can boost your cognitive function and lower stress. Is that true or false? Can yoga lower stress and boost your cognitive function? Tell us in the comments, put your best guess in there, and you will get those delicious healthy recipes from common pantry items. Okay, Dr. Van, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Let's say it's 8 o'clock at night, I'm watching Netflix and really wanting some chocolate. Walk me through how I might use CBT to avoid that temptation and kind of stay on track.
Oh, we've all been there, right? Okay, so let's put the 4-step process of CBT into play here. And let me start by saying that as a disclaimer that this works to varying degrees with different individuals, and that people in general who live with obesity or overweight may have different sensitivities or vulnerabilities when it comes to urges. So I'm not saying that this is a foolproof plan that works immediately once you start using it. It is something that requires repetition and practice and works differently for everybody. So let's put the 4-step process into play. The first step is really to increase your awareness of the thoughts that lead to a behavior that you want to change. So in this case, it is the nighttime eating behavior. And so you've got 8 p.m., you've got Netflix, you're wanting some chocolate. Now, the idea of thought awareness is to really think about what are you thinking in that present moment that's leading you to want to go to the pantry to get that chocolate. Secondly, identify if there's any distortion that's coming into play here. In weight management, we categorize distortions into permission thoughts or self-critical thoughts. In this case, it's a permission thought, which is very common at nighttime. And so identifying the permission thought allows you to step outside of the thinking process and to really identify the unhelpful thinking pattern that's leading to the overeating. Now, the third step is to challenge your thinking. This might be the most difficult part that people find because you've got to ask yourself a few questions here. Now, you can ask yourself, is there any evidence that supports that this thought is actually true? This thought that I've had a long day, I deserve a treat. Is there any evidence to support that it's true? And what's the most realistic outcome here? Tell yourself the full story. So I run a virtual psychotherapy group with a colleague of mine named Sandra Ilya. It's called 3 Sales Recovery. We have talked so much about telling yourself the full story. Now, you might tell yourself that you've had a long day. You might tell yourself that it feels really, really good in that moment to eat chocolate. But how do you typically feel moments after you eat the chocolate? How do you feel the next day? How do you feel a week later when it's been done with repetition? So tell yourself the entire story. the third question could be that you ask yourself, what's the effect of me believing this thought, and what would be the effect of me changing this thought, right? So you don't have full control over the urges or the cravings that you experience. You don't even have full control over the initial thoughts that you have. But what you do have control over is the perspective and what sort of thoughts come after those automatic thoughts. The last step of the CBT process is really to come up with a realistic and rational thought to replace the automatic thought, because we know that these automatic permission thoughts tend to be recurring. They tend to happen in the same place at the same time every day. The idea of coming up with a realistic, rational thought is so that you kind of have it in your arsenal of tools when that permission thought comes into play again.
Okay, so give us an example with the Netflix example. What might be a thought I could have instead of "I deserve a treat"? What might I think instead?
Okay, you might think to yourself, I deserve a treat, and I have had a long day. A lot of people experience a number of stressors throughout the day that typically are diffused by food in that moment, notably ultra processed foods, right? In keeping with the theme of telling yourself the whole story, in the past, how has the story ended for me? Whenever I give in to chocolate every single night while watching Netflix, does it reinforce the fact that does it reinforce this craving? Does it reinforce this urge? Because remember, repetition is the best form of permanence. So that could go either way. It could go in the way of good habits forming, or habits that you want to change, right? So if you're constantly giving into this craving at nighttime with these specific environmental triggers that are in your periphery, i.e. the TV, 8 p.m., curtains drawn, nighttime. Those all come together. Your brain gets really good at learning that, and it makes it a lot more difficult in subsequent evenings to combat that urge if you don't stand up to it now.
So that's almost another example of kind of telling ourselves the full story. If I can manage to
Yes.
resist it tonight, it's going to be easier tomorrow. It's going to be much easier the next night. So you're kind of doing
Yeah.
future me a favor by just letting it be tonight.
Yeah, and what would be different if you did manage this craving tonight? It wouldn't just be that, okay, I saved myself some calories. That's the low-hanging fruit here. But if you dive a little bit deeper, you are actually building a circuit in your brain that allows you to take a different route when you have urges, right? So these are the urges that often get in the way of people managing their weight. We know that people who live with obesity and overweight, they have, like I said, vulnerabilities and sensitivities to certain triggers in their environment, whether it's stress or the availability of ultra processed foods. Now, if you're able to stand up to those impulses, then you may stand to do that again and again with repetition over time.
This is the whole neurons that fire together, wire together. So the more I do it, the easier it gets for me to do every time.
Yeah, it's a learned process. So like with any skill, CBT is a new skill to learn.
Folks, if you're really enjoying tonight's show, I'd like to invite you to check out our podcast. It's a collection of interviews we've done with a whole bunch of medical experts, including Dr. Van, covering what the science tells us about what it really takes to lose weight and keep it off. We've got interviews with dietitians, psychologists, and physicians. Just search My Weight What to Know wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Dr. Van, let's take on a different scenario. Let's say a few months ago, I lost some weight. I was feeling really good, but I've since regained it, and now I'm feeling pretty defeated. How might I use CBT to help me get back on track?
Yeah, this is a very common scenario, and I often will have my patients draw a weight loss history curve. And the common curve, and this might resonate with your audience, is that of the yo-yo pattern, right? So weight cycling, and we know the weight cycling has very little to do with the person who's going through it. It has little to do with willpower. It has little to do with that person not wanting it enough. We often see that in times where people are regaining their weight, there's a metabolic adaptation that's taking place. Your body tends to want to conserve body weight. And so by doing that, it will, in the face of dietary restriction, it will generate hunger. It will generate cravings. Your brain might start to fire in places that make you want specific foods that are higher in calories. And so people often attribute their weight regain to themselves. They often blame themselves. And this question is a really common one. What do I do when I have these thoughts of feeling like it's my fault, it's shame, it's blame? And so we need to start building resilience. We need to take that as an opportunity to build resilience. And in doing so, education is important. Education about the biology that is involved with weight struggle, that it's not only just what you eat and how much you move, that it actually has a lot to do with the hormones that are dictated by the genes that you're born with. And this is all intertwined with the environment that you're set up in. So in response to your question, Ansley, I really want the person who is maybe having these thoughts or resonating with this question to consider that you have a condition that confers higher cravings, that confers higher hunger, and that has nothing to do with your inability to manage your weight. Your weight is actually dictated a lot by things beyond your control. And so the thing that you can control is your perspective, and you can control to some degree your choice. And so I would say that self-compassion, kindness, grace are important ingredients to building resilience long term, and to really give yourself that permission to have slips and to have setbacks, because they're a normal part of the process.
That's great. So again, the thought here might be, I'm a failure, and we would replace that with another thought, something like, nobody's perfect. I'm working really hard on this. This is a complicated situation, and practice using that thought instead of the more self-critical thought over and over again.
Yeah, because viewing yourself through the lens of I'm a failure, like where does that get you? This goes back to thought challenging, right? Like, is there any evidence that this thought is actually true? Now, a client might say, "Yeah, it is true because I've yo-yoed in the past. This is really something that has gotten me time and time again." But if you view it from the perspective of, okay, there are things that are beyond my control in this case, right? So I've tried really, really hard. I know I put a lot of effort into it. I know I've lost some weight, but there's something that's getting me to regain it, and I feel like a failure. But maybe what would happen if I actually viewed this from the perspective of, okay, setbacks are actually normal. The weight's not coming down like I'd hoped, but is there something else that I can gather from here that I can build my success on?
Dr. Van, what do you tell your patients about how to avoid mindless eating? Any suggestions you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would ask my patients typically to consider if there's any specific times of the day that they're at highest risk of overeating. And the common scenarios are mid-afternoon coffee trip. You're going for a coffee, but then, those tantalizing desserts are in the stand and you grab one of those. There's the pre-dinner snacking. So you're ravenous after you come home from work and then you start raiding the fridge. There's also the nighttime eating. Now, your brain is very, very smart. It is really good at short circuiting to what's going to allow you to consume the most calories. And so really know your high risk time, know about the environmental cues that are in place, because it typically happens at the same time every single day, and work based on one habit at a time. So if it's the TV, if it is you being by the kitchen while you're working through your lunch, if it is coming home and raiding the fridge, then know what sort of environment it is that is causing that overeating behavior, and maybe change the environment. Maybe set your environment up for success by only having whole foods available that aren't going to make your brain dance. When it comes to consuming these ultra processed foods, we know that they are designed to make your brain go bonkers for it.
Speaking of kind of the diet culture that we live in today, it's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons. But one of those reasons is it really promotes the idea of kind of the all or nothing mentality, meaning I either do it perfectly or I don't do it at all. Can you talk about why this distortion isn't helpful and how we might use CBT to avoid kind of falling into that trap?
Yeah, and I like that you refer to it as a distortion, because it ultimately is one of the most common distortions I see in practice. And I think that it speaks to the diet culture as a whole. The diet culture has billions of dollars devoted to making you think that this is going to be the solution. And it's not just any diet, it might be boot camps or exercise challenges. So, what I often see in practice is that patients are looking for a diet, and I'm not going to stand in their way of having a diet. I'm here to help them use CBT to adhere to that dietary plan. And so, with that being said, if they drop off of their diet for reasons of I'm stressed or I'm going to a party or there's a vacation and I won't be able to stick to it, my role is really not to help them adhere specifically to the diet. My role is to really help them identify what sort of thoughts will get in your way that promote the opposite behavior of the way that you actually could see yourself living for the rest of your life and to be happy with. And so using CBT is helpful because it allows you to have a bit more flexibility. And instead of this black or white thinking where you're either really, really perfect or you're not doing anything at all, I encourage patients to really live in this gray zone area where they can marry these two values of health, mobility, function, energy, whatever it is that's important to them about weight loss, with food, friends, family, because we know that that is where joy is derived from. We know that food is celebrated in so many cultures, in all cultures, if anything, that social outings are typically gathered around food. So CBT allows you to find a gray area that allows you to enjoy both of those things without feeling that guilt, without feeling that shame.
For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking about how CBT can be helpful on the weight loss journey, and we are giving away some delicious, healthy recipes that can be made from items you probably already have in your pantry right now. All you have to do to get those recipes is answer tonight's trivia question, which is, true or false, yoga can boost your cognitive function and lower stress. Is that true or false? Can yoga lower stress and boost your cognitive function? Tell us in the comments and you will get those delicious recipes. All right, Dr. Van, if someone watching at home says, okay, I want to try CBT, I think it could be really helpful to me, what kind of professional can help them kind of get started with this process?
Yeah, well, lucky for us, cognitive behavioral therapy is something that clinical professionals beyond physicians can use. So, social workers are very skilled in CBT, psychologists. There's also virtual group programming that's available to you. And so, if you do your research online, I'm sure that there are a number of online platforms that are available to you, especially in this day and age, that you can do from your own home.
So, speaking of healthcare professionals, for those of you in Canada who might be looking for a physician who specializes in managing excess weight, you definitely want to take a look at our physician locator tool on our website. We'll link to it in the comments. It can help you find medical resources near you, either in person or virtually. Dr. Van's clinic and contact information is on there, as well as many other fantastic physicians across Canada. All right, Dr. Van, we know that sleep is a really important part of weight management and overall health. Can CBT be used in a way to promote better sleep?
Oh, yes, of course. Sleep is in itself its own behavior. Um, so yeah, sleep is really the foundation of all good health. And the reason in the context of weight management, I endorse sleep so heavily is because it helps you bolster the CBT that's required to help you manage the cravings and the urges that generally come along in the day to day. If you have sleep deprivation, we often find that patients suffer with more cravings, they suffer with more hunger, they have insulin, they may be at risk of insulin resistance. And so I would encourage one to use CBT for sleep management. And one way to do that would be to really identify why sleep is important to you. So I gave you a few reasons just there. And then to really set up your environment so that it's conducive to having a high quality sleep. Because it's not just about how much sleep you're getting, it's about the quality of the sleep as well. And so diminishing screen time, not having a screen in your face 1 to 2 hours before bed. It's a hard one to adhere to, but you start small, right? So I myself have started with 30 minutes off of screen, 1 hour off, and now I'm 2 hours off of screen before bedtime. And so that's been really helpful to my own personal health, diminishing that screen time. The other thing is to really set up your sleep environment so that that's something you look forward to, right? So for me, I've got my diffuser, I got my lavender oil, I have a nice skincare regimen that I really look forward to. So this will vary according to individual, but really try to set it up so that you can turn off the Netflix, you can turn off the TV, and you will have no problem going to bed if you've got your favorite book, for instance. So yeah, sleep is one that I would say is number one in my books when it comes to weight management.
So we've talked a lot about how changing our thinking can help people on their weight loss journey. And I think that points to a bigger reality that for many people living with overweight or obesity, eating less and moving more alone isn't always enough to help them reach a healthier weight. So can you talk a little bit about why taking that next step and seeking medical treatment is really beneficial and often necessary for people?
Yeah, the eat less, move more paradigm is still commonly touted, but it's so antiquated, and this there's been so much science and literature to substantiate the fact that obesity is actually a manifestation of things beyond just what you're eating and how much you're moving, that it actually is deeply steeped in genetics. So the DNA that you're born with, the hormones that regulate your appetite and your cravings, the fact that your body is designed to survive in the face of famine, but that in this current environment in North America, there's no longer a famine. And so there are a bunch of things that actually are intertwined that the person living with obesity has very little control over. And with that being said, seeking medical treatment is a really, really smart way to go about treating obesity rather than just going to a low hanging fruit diet, because it actually addresses the underlying biology that's involved with the appetite dysregulation. You might find that, and many of my patients who live with obesity will tell me that they eat much less than their leaner counterparts. And I believe them. I definitely believe them. And there's something going on there that is well beyond what they're just eating. There's something going on beneath the surface that is deeply steeped in the genetics, the biology, the stuff that we don't typically address with CBT alone and diet alone.
Wow, Dr. Van, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your very practical suggestions. I'm personally really excited to practice some CBT myself.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to everyone at home for watching tonight. Here is the answer to tonight's trivia question. True or false, yoga can boost your cognitive function and lower stress? The answer is true. All the more reason to get on that mat. If you didn't have time to answer the trivia question, but you'd like that collection of recipes, leave a comment for us and tell us what you thought about tonight's show. We will be back with you for our next show soon. But until then, please stay safe and take good care. Good night.